Okay, guys, I'm gonna edit this later, but let me see. Let me find the video I was just watching. History. That's not it.
My name is Kate. I'm an artist, I'm a mom to 3 boys, and a software developer.
And so if you think...
Okay, make cut here. Guys, today this is Gothic Central with a video that I thought would be really helpful to watch with you guys. It's a video that I started watching when after a nap or sleeping, and I realized, you know what, I bet I have a lot of subscribers who could probably benefit from this information on a personal level. So, and maybe that's not the case, but in the case that it is, I decided I should make this video. I'm going to be reacting to someone that I like to watch, and he's a, let me double check if the YouTube thing is there. He's from a doctor licensed in the U.S. and learn more about how experts define health resources. So he's a certified professional, just to say. He's a counselor. He's an actual counselor, and I trust him. And he goes by GG Gamer, Healthy Gamer GG, I mean. So we're gonna watch this video, and I'm gonna point some things out when he says things, but you know, that's why it's a reaction. But we're gonna watch this video, and I really hope this video helps other people like me that have anger issues. And then I might make another video after this that's more like comedy focused, you know, just reacting to stuff. Oh, and in case you're wondering, I'm drinking tea. Tea is relaxing. I've been drinking a lot of tea. I like tea.
Today, I'm going to teach y'all how to think your way to happiness. Now, this may sound absolutely insane because you may have heard research about what determines whether people are happy. So, for example, there are studies that show that if you make $100,000 a year or more, then that correlates with happiness. People who are in sexually fulfilling relationships are more likely to be happy. But there's a big fundamental problem with the research we have on happiness, which is that it tells us who is happy, not how to become happy.
See, the reason why I paused it here is because this is a point that I want to emphasize. There's a difference between who is happy and why that person is happy. Because, okay, I want to give an example. Think about it maybe a bit more subjectively and maybe a bit more metaphorical. Think about a turtle who is happy eating crickets. And then think about a lion who is happy sharing a kill. Think about a tiger who is happy eating all by himself in his cave the gazelle he just caught in the forest. They're all happy, but they don't all have the same situation. So I guess my point is, you can be happy even if you don't have what everyone else has. And that's the point that I think is to be drawn from here. But I'll let you guys make your own conclusions. But I just wanted to point that out, what he's focusing on, the why they're happy. That's the question.
So if you're sitting there reading this research, right, that says, okay, I need to make 6 figures and I need to have a sexually fulfilling relationship, you can't really wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to make 6 figures today and I'm going to find a sexually fulfilling relationship. The problem with the research on happiness is it doesn't show us how to actually become happy. And that's what I'm going to share with y'all today. Hey, y'all, I want to talk for a second about HG coaching.
So, that paused on an awkward frame. So, notice he said how they're happy, or why they're happy, or maybe he didn't say why. Maybe he did. But he also said how they're happy. So, why are they happy? That's the first question. And then, you think, oh, that's what I need to do. But wait, you forgot something. You need another question. How are they happy? Because, think about it. How is the turtle happy eating crickets when the tiger or the lion is eating a gazelle? One's eating alone and one is eating in a group. How is the tiger not lonely? How is the turtle not hungrier? How is the lion patient enough to share his food? You can think all these things, or you can just understand that a turtle just wants a cricket. It loves crickets. A tiger likes to eat alone because he's at peace in his safe, warm cave. And happiness is subjective. You could be happy doing anything if that's where your mind is at. And this is kind of where things are getting. Happiness, like all other emotions and sensations, comes from the brain. How you think will determine how you feel. And that's kind of what he's getting to, but I don't want to summarize it yet. A lot
of people wonder, why do I need to sign up for coaching? Can't I just DIY it? Can't I watch another YouTube video? And you're right, you can absolutely do those things, which is why we offer those resources. But one thing that I found is that people who try to do things by themselves take a really long time to do it. And my experience has been that the earlier that you get your life together, the better your life will be. So coaching is designed to not help people treat mental illness, but discover things like what you want out of life, what's holding you back, how to conquer procrastination, and how to find motivation. And I have worked with each and every one of our coaches. I work with them for 8 weeks to make sure they're of the highest quality and they really represent what we offer at HG. So if y'all are interested, check out the link in the description below. Now, it may sound kind of bizarre, but it turns out that the most important thing that you can control for your own happiness is actually your thoughts. Now, this may sound surprising because isn't happiness about emotions? Because if I'm depressed and sad all the time and I wake up and I feel ashamed of myself and I'm so depressed and it's hard to get out of bed, it's hard for me to be happy, right? That makes perfect sense. So isn't it about emotion? Well, it turns out that if you look at research on psychiatry and psychotherapy, that emotions are a big part of it. But if you really look at what we do in psychotherapy, it's not just fixing emotions. In fact, the goal is to decompress emotions so that you can help your patient start to think clearly. And the real change that we see happens when our patients start to think clearly and think in a healthier way. Now, that may sound kind of confusing because you're kind of saying, what does that mean to think in a healthier way? How do I do that? So let me give you all just a simple example. Let's say I go through a breakup. This is a fact. And since there's a breakup, my body has all kinds of physiological attachments. There's less oxytocin. Maybe I get a drop in my serotonin level. All kinds of stuff is happening to me physically and emotionally. But whether I'm happy or not after the breakup depends on my thoughts. So if after the breakup I start to think to myself, oh my God, I'll be alone forever. My partner will be able to move on because they're better looking and everyone is interested in them, but I'm such a POS and no one's ever going to want me. Those thoughts are going to keep us in a very unhappy place. On the flip side, if I am resilient and if my mindset is different, and let's remember, what is mindset? It's actually thinking. If my mindset is thinking, I can think things like, hey, this relationship was really important to me. It's sad. I'm going to grieve and it's going to hurt for a while, but we grew.
You see this right here? This is why if I ever have a son, I'm going to teach him something that he's going to mention later about how to fix your thoughts. But I would also add on to that some external things, like if I had a son and he went through some kind of breakup or something and he was depressed, I would tell him to do the thing that he's going to say to do to fix your thoughts. But I would also tell him, go take a shower. Don't play any music. Something might come on that interrupts your thought pattern. But, and then after you're done, we're gonna sit down and have some hot tea. And we're going to talk about whatever video games you like to play or that type of thing. And then you know what we're going to do? We're going to go down to the coffee shop, get some coffee. And then you know what we're going to do? You want a new shirt, new pair of pants, something like that, we'll go do that. All these things, it would just change the thought pattern long enough to make them feel better. And then, if he woke up the next day and he started thinking about her, I'd ask him, okay, why did you think about her? And how can you think about her and feel better? If you do want to think about her. How can you direct your thoughts in a way that's beneficial for both what you want and what you would rather feel? So, more or less, I would teach him how to think his way out of it. Well, reinforcing that with some good habits. Because, when people get depressed, they tend to not shower as much. Sorry, I just realized I just realized there for a moment I might be kind of hypocritical myself right now. But anyways, I need to use a sticky roller. There's fur on my pants.
Grew up into different people. We've been dating for 4 years and we have different views on life. So it's like, it's okay for it to end now. I appreciated it while it happened, and while it hurts, it's probably best for me in the long run. Same situation, same physiologic response, two different modes of thinking. And if we look at the evidence-based practice of psychotherapy, what we find is that cognitive reframing, which is literally changing your thoughts, is the most effective or one of the most effective coping skills that you can teach someone as a therapist. Just to contrast that, people who focus exclusively on emotions tend to actually stay stuck. So we even have research that shows that people who focus on emotion-focused coping, which means that I'm going to just manage my emotions all the time, don't actually fix their problems.
You see, I agree with that because I'm going to explain something. I have bipolar really bad. So even when I'm working somewhere, say that I get a customer and they make me mad, I will walk away. I will go to like a back room, and even if I just do it once, I'll punch a box, like an empty box, like the kind of boxes where it's like, no one's gonna need this. It's going in the garbage anyway. Or if I'm at home, I'll take out the garbage. Do you know why I do these things? Because I need to do something physical to soothe my frustration. Let me explain in a little more detail. When I'm angry about something and I go out and I yell really loud out near where the factory is, where it's quiet, it's soothing for me to yell because it alleviates a lot of tension. So if people wonder why when I get angry, I yell at things and break things, it's because it's a desperate, ineffective attempt to soothe my frustrations. Because imagine this. Imagine your hand is on fire, but it's not actually real. But it feels real. And there's water in front of you, but if you stick your hand in it, you're going to contaminate the water you're going to make a drink with, and everyone's actually thirsty. And that's definitely real. But the fire is not. If you can't contain yourself, you are going to stick your hand in the drink to get rid of the perceived threat, because it's too much to bear. That is the thing. And I have a low tolerance for discomfort and pain and all that. So that's kind of why I have a bad temper. But the stuff that he's talking about actually does help. Like, I remember the other day, I think, well, you know how older women, sometimes they like to nag their, grandkids or whatever. Well, I was talking to my grandmother one day, and she was kind of nagging about something, and I was feeling very angry and annoyed. But you know what I did? I thought in my head, what if I just slam my fist down real quick on the table or the counter? And I thought, wait a minute. I wonder if I can just not do that. That's the first thing I thought. Can I really just think about it long enough to not actually go through with it? Think about it. And then I remembered something. And just for context, I do read Elon's book. I'll put it this way. Let me move my phone out of the way. My phone is definitely in the way right now. Some people have the Bible. For me, that's what this is. And I remembered something I read in this. So let me rephrase. This, if you're an INTJ, you're, a thinker, someone who looks up to scientists or Elon, this thing is like the Bible for us intellectual people. It's Elon, written by, in case you're wondering, it says Walter Isaacson. That's the guy who interviewed Elon Musk to write this book. I believe so. I'm not entirely sure. But what I'm going to say is that in that book, there's a part where Elon says about how he would just freeze up and think about it. And I remembered that, and that's exactly what I did. Now, that did make me a lot more angry holding it in. But when I thought back, I remembered in retrospect, I didn't punch the shelf. I didn't hit anything. I didn't yell at my grandma. And then upon realizing that, I thought, wait a minute. That's actually kind of satisfying that I didn't overreact. I can do this again. And you want to know what I've noticed? When you are around other people, you're living with other people, the energy you put out by the things you do, imagine you're like a filter and you're swimming in water. If you start, this is going to sound kind of gross, but if you start pissing in the water, you don't want to be in that water anymore because now it's contaminated. Everyone else doesn't want to be in the water, and everyone's angry that they're in the water. And they come at you because you're the one who pissed in the water. So if I punch things and get angry, I'm putting out bad, this is going to sound like a hippie, but I don't mean it like that, bad energy or bad, I put out something bad, so something bad comes back at me. So what I do instead is I let it kind of process in my mind. I keep the poison in my mind. And then I think, well, I kept it in my mind. Nothing good will come of me explaining this, so I'll just keep doing this. And then what you do is you're building up a tolerance with a way to diffuse it mentally over time after the event. Now, if it keeps happening back to back, you're going to have to build up a really strong tolerance. But eventually, when you learn how to think your way out of it, like he's saying, it really does work. And for the record, when I was a teenager, I beat up an old washer until my arms bled because I didn't want to talk to someone because I was already mad at someone else. And I didn't start off using my arms. I used a big rock, like a 50-pound rock, or maybe a 100-pound rock. Maybe it was 150 pounds. No, it was maybe about 100 pounds. It was a granite rock. It was like the kind you put in your driveway, but a big boulder, like you put in a stream or something. Yeah, I picked it up like it was nothing. I was angry, and I was a teenager. But it's been a long time since then. But what I'm saying is, if you can learn how to think your way out of bad thought processes, it can save you a lot of trouble.
It's the people who are able to make cognitive shifts and look at the world in a different way that are able to fix their problems as well as become happier. And for some reason, as a society, we've sort of lost sight of how to think and how important thinking is. So we're going to teach y'all a little bit about how to cultivate the right thinking. So let's start by understanding the precise sequence of thinking, emotions, and being unhappy.
So, I wanted to say something. That what he's saying about not focusing on emotions, that is a very important part of it, I would say, because think about it. Like someone like me, if I'm in a pissed off mood and someone hands me a cupcake, that might seem innocent on the surface, but it actually is going to piss me off more because it's like, great, now I'm going to either walk away and they're going to be mad, or this sweet thing is going to hurt my teeth, and I don't like sweet things normally. So, yeah, that might calm someone else down, but that's an external thing, and it's more likely to piss me off and make it harder for me to think my way out of it. So, yeah. Also, he's going to say something later on here that I'm going to agree with immensely, and I'm going to point out exactly why I completely agree with what he's going to say, but I'm going to wait till that point to pause again.
So thankfully, we have research on this where people have done even things like brain scans. And what we've sort of discovered is that the sequence of events that lead to unhappiness start with thoughts. So what usually happens is I have a thought. So the cognitive thought happens first. And following the thought is an affective change, which means an emotional response. So I will think to myself, oh no, I'm going to be alone after this breakup. And the second I have that thought, I will feel an emotional reaction. That thought will bring the sadness out. And if you pay attention to your own experience, you'll find that usually negative thoughts start first, and then they will activate emotions, and then the emotions will spur more thoughts. Now, this is when we get into things like thought loops, right? So I start to think to myself, I start with, I'm going to be alone forever. And then I feel sad. And then the sadness breeds more negative thoughts. I start stalking them on social media. I start, sitting around and like listening to sad music. And there's some kind of like affective change, emotional change that then propagates further thoughts. And y'all may have experienced this negative experience of a thought loop where you can't stop your mind from thinking. And when I worked with patients who have thought loops like this, what they want more than anything else is to just stop thinking. And instinctively, they know that the thinking is the problem. And this is why they reach for things like substances or video games or technology or whatever, any kind of distraction to shut off the thoughts. This is why people will drink a lot of alcohol before they pass out, because I need to stop the thoughts. I need to stop the thoughts. And why do we reach for those kinds of things? Because we haven't been trained at how to cultivate the right thoughts. And it turns out that the scientific evidence mirrors people's experiences, that if we really look at the origin of mental illness, it starts with a thought, then there's an emotional response, and then there is this really important step called a perseveration or a rumination of thoughts. And when the perseveration and rumination, which means we keep thinking the same thing, rises and rises and rises, that's what eventually leads to psychopathology or mental illness. So thought, emotion, more thoughts that we can't break out of, mental illness. And so how do we fix this situation? It turns out that we've got one really interesting option, which is if you look in the history of the world, in my opinion, and I'm not an expert in all historical, things everywhere, I think the yogis did a really fantastic job of figuring out how to cultivate the right thoughts. So they came up with this practice called mantra or mantra. And what they would do is they would engage with a particular thought over and over and over again. Now, mantras traditionally were chanted, but it turns out that chanting a mantra actually weakens its power. If you look at some of these old texts on mantra, what you'll find is that the yogis will say any mantra that's chanted if it is whispered under your breath, the power of the mantra increases tenfold. So instead of saying things out loud, we actually want to repeat them softly to ourselves.
Now, real quick, I just wanted to say something. What he's talking about is actually true, because I realized this in retrospect when I heard him say this, is when I get angry, I yell out negative things. I get really pissed off. But over time, once I reach a certain point, it's like the things I'm saying don't make sense anymore, because I'm saying them out loud, and for some reason they just stop. Like, I tell myself I'm worthless and I'll never be good enough and all this and that, but eventually I stop believing it. I don't know why, but it seems like I just lose energy. But then I start whispering to myself, this will be all fine tomorrow. It'll be fine in 5 minutes. It really does get better. And it's like, and I used to attribute that to the fact that I freaked out and got it out, but really, it was exactly what I was doing that was actually rewiring my thoughts. So I think that's why myself and people with anger issues will do that sort of thing. But maybe hearing more of the science will explain it.
This is what the science of mantra says. And it turns out that there's a very fascinating neuroscientific correlation for this. So when we say things out loud, this is something called phonotyping, and it actually happens from the cerebellum. So it actually happens in a primitive structure of our brain, kind of in the back of our brain. And if you look at sort of the subjectivity of saying things out loud, what you sort of find is when you're speaking, you're not really paying attention, right? The two are sort of opposite. You can go up and give a speech and you're not really paying attention or listening to what you're saying. You can't listen and speak at the same time, which is what makes socializing so damn hard, because you'll say something and, hey, did I say this already? Did I not say it? I wasn't really paying attention. And that's literally because the cerebellum, where phonotyping happens, where speech kind of operates, it's sort of short.
Real quick, I just wanted to say that's why I don't like it when people talk over me while I'm trying to speak, because I can't, the point of them speaking is so that I can hear them, and I can't hear them while I'm talking. That's why people should. And then whenever people say, oh, but this is how I always talk, I'm thinking, then you don't know how to speak properly, because you should not be talking while I'm talking. If you're talking, then I will be silent and listen. But if I'm going to talk, I need you to shut the hell up and listen to me, because I can't do both. That can't happen. That's why I hate interruptions so much, because it just like when I'm talking and someone interrupts me, all it does is it ruins my ability to hear myself talking and understand what I'm, or not my it disrupts my comprehension of myself and what I'm saying, because now I'm trying to listen to them instinctually, like reactively. Or if I continue to talk because I'm more concerned with what I'm saying, they'll get mad at me. Well, I just wanted to say that because I hate it when people interrupt me. It makes me angry. I actually get the impulse to punch someone in the face when I'm talking and they talk over me. And I also get the impulse to continue talking over them after the physical act. But that's my anger issues. I'm gonna keep listening to them.
Term memory. And so the point of that part of our brain is we're going to put some information in, and then we're going to send it out for the purpose of communication. So here's what's really interesting. When we sub-vocalize, which means we say things under our breath, it actually activates a completely different part of the brain and serves a completely different purpose. It activates our frontal lobes, especially our orbitofrontal cortex. Now, this is kind of weird, right? So when we say things out loud, we're activating this part of the brain. And when we say things subvocally, we're actually activating a completely different part. And what is this part responsible for? So the orbitofrontal cortex and our frontal lobes are responsible for directing our behavior. They're responsible for controlling the other parts of our brain. And so it's kind of interesting, but when we sub-vocalize things, it's not temporary and short term and kind of goes out of the mouth and doesn't accomplish anything. When we sub-vocalize things, they actually sink deeper within us. And so if you think about the people that you know that are very vocal about their positivity and their thoughts, right? They're like, like I'm going to be positive and the world is great and I'm going to advertise on social media. I'm going to tell everyone, be positive, be positive, be positive. They all turn into passive-aggressive, narcissistic assholes.
That's what I wanted to pause on. That's exactly what I wanted to explain. I have known that for so long, but I just didn't bother telling anyone because I thought no one would listen to me. But I'm pleased to hear that there's like a scientific explanation behind it. And that is why I don't do that shit. You hear me? I got no filter. I'm talking like I always talk. You know, if something's negative, whatever, talk about it. I'm not going to not talk about it just because it's negative. See, this is why I don't like people like that. You know, every guy knows that person online or whatever, they're like, be positive, this and that, like he was saying. And then, like he's going to explain later, they become a narcissistic asshole, and then you talk to them later and they explode on you, and then they act all happy about it. It's actually kind of creepy. But it's like, no, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I would rather someone be real with me. I would rather someone say, hey, one day, hey, I had a pretty good day, you know, did this, and that, and feel pretty good. My thought process is in a good place. And then maybe the next day they woke up, stubbed their toes, spilled their coffee, they're in a pissed off mood, and they have to record. And maybe they're like, ah, shit, I feel horrible, this and that. Mind's in the gutter. Not in that way. Like, their mind is in a bad thought loop or whatever. It's like overcharged. It's thinking about all the wrong things. Or maybe they're being compulsive or something. I'd rather hear that because that makes more sense to me. If you're mad, don't hide it. I mean, you can hide it, but don't work so hard to act like that's not the case. That's why I don't like fake positive people. Like, I'm okay with people that are positive because they genuinely feel that way, but people that are fake positive, I can see through it and I don't like it. Like, it just, I care deeply about what is genuinely true, not what just seems true on the surface. And I always bring that up whenever I explain to people why I don't like it when people are overly positive. And they just don't seem to get it. But I suppose that's a side effect of intelligence, I guess. Anyways,
like content creators and influencers who are talking crap all the time about positivity. But the moment they get upset by something, and I guess I'm guilty of this as well, they rail at everyone else and all the positivity goes out the window. You may know these people who have all this false positivity that they're advertising all the time. We even have a term for it, which is virtue signaling. I'm going to signal to the rest of the world that I am good in some way, and that will be a substitute for actual virtue. And it turns out that the yogis were spot on, that when we sub-vocalize, it actually sinks into our mind and starts to shape our thoughts more. And you may sort of notice this when you mutter something under your breath, who are you really talking to? You're talking to yourself, and it's kind of sinking further in. And it turns out that when we sub-vocalize, it actually shapes our thinking much more profoundly than saying something out loud. Now, the next question kind of becomes, okay, so even if we use this technique of sub-vocalization to implant things into our mind, how do I go about cognitively reframing? How do I start thinking different things for myself? And so this is a simple exercise that I give to my patients and I can share with you as well. So the next time you're in a situation which feels bad and your thinking is in the wrong kind of space, what I want you to do is pretend that you are talking to a friend of yours or a younger sibling or something like that. And try to be as encouraging and compassionate as possible. What would you say to this person if they were going through the same situation you were going through? And this is where, you know, you'll much more likely to be more forgiving, be more encouraging, and be more compassionate. So you can even write down whatever you would say to that person and kind of make a list.
Okay, now see, I don't do all this. Remember what he was saying about an emotion becomes a thought becomes a thought process, and then that becomes an illness? Well, sometimes I seem like I have a split personality because that might maybe be my fault because of my thought process and a lot of things that I decide to think about. But yeah, when I am in a bad mood, I will do this weird thing where I'll sort of do some of this that he's talking about, but I'll do it in a way that seems kind of psychotic. Like I'll be talking under my breath to myself, and I'm not going to get into all of it, but it's best if when I do that alone, because when other people hear it, they think I'm insane. But it does serve a purpose. In fact, I talk to myself a lot.
Of it or think through what you would say. Now, this is where we're not really taught how to think, and this is where a lot of people will trip up. Because when you try to say the alternative, the other part of your mind that is thinking negative thoughts will start to fight it, right? So then you get this battle between your mind where there's a part of you that's trying to be positive and a part of you that is persisting in negativity. And then there's conflict, and then you kind of end up losing, right? Because if it applies to you, so this is kind of how this looks.
So I kind of thought of a way that I could make this work for me, but it would make me look really psychotic. And I'll explain it to you. It's it almost makes me laugh because I'm like thinking of someone doing this and it's making me laugh. Since saying things out loud makes the thought lose its power, do that, but also say the good things quiet to yourself. But I just realized if I was sitting there going like, I'm fucking worthless, and okay, everything's gonna get better. I'm fucking worthless, everything's gonna get better. People would think that I'm insane. So what I do instead is I get all the bad stuff out loud somewhere secluded, and as I'm walking back, because I don't want to be real loud on the way back, I say the positive things to myself, but I let it build its way up and ease its way up. So that's how I go about it. Then there's different methods when I'm around people, but it's harder. So there's that.
So let's say you got dumped, right? And so you tell your friend, hey, like, y'all grew into different people, y'all grew apart, it's okay, you're a good person, you'll find somebody else. That's what you'll say to someone else. But then your mind will be like, nuh-uh, right? That's for other people. In our case, I'm socially stunted. I've been with this person so long, I don't even know how to date. I've gained 20 pounds and now I'm unattractive and I don't have an online dating profile. And your mind starts arguing with you. And then what we try to do is we try to fight that argument. We try to have the positivity win. The whole thing is completely stupid and idiotic, and we don't need to do it at all. We can bypass the whole damn thing through subvocalization. So this is the main thing that we forget or we miss, is that you actually don't have to argue with yourself. You don't have to convince yourself of anything. You don't have to say anything to the negative part of you. You do not have to win with these thoughts. All you need to do is subvocalize them. And this is how we literally inject positive thoughts into our mind where they will start to live. This is what subvocalization does. Now, this may sound bizarre because you're saying, well, hold on a second, but I have all these experiences and I have all these thoughts. Are you saying that I can kind of subvocalize and it'll literally change my mindset? Honestly, in the best expertise that I have and based on all of my understanding of the literature, yogic practice for about 20 years now, I think that's what's going to happen. And there's some really interesting clinical evidence to support it. And that comes from schizophrenia. So this is a little bit heavy, but I want y'all to understand this. When someone has schizophrenia, the thoughts in their head become a reality, right? So they have delusions. So what is a delusion? It is a thought in my head which I think is real, but it's not real. And so I've had patients with schizophrenia literally jump out of third-story windows because the thoughts in their head were so powerful that that's what they thought they needed to do to survive. So I know it sounds kind of heavy, but what we sort of know is that in schizophrenia, the thoughts that they have are very shaping for their lives. Now, here's the wild thing.
I'm sorry, I thought of something funny while he was talking, and I don't want to say it out loud because I'll get in trouble if I say it out loud because I have a dark sense of humor. But I'm just gonna listen to what he's saying.
People with schizophrenia subvocalize all the time. There are studies which will analyze the electrical activity of the tongue in patients with schizophrenia. And what they found, because when you subvocalize, is you have tongue movement that's very, very minor. So you're speaking under your breath. So it's not rapid tongue movement. That's how you can tell if someone's subvocalizing. You measure tongue muscles. And so when these researchers actually looked at subvocalization in schizophrenia.
Well, I'm getting so many intrusive thoughts right now. Oh, wow. Okay. I just thought in my head, if there's someone standing out of a 5-story building and then it'd be like on a comedy movie or something, and then they jump and then they get a thought in their head. It's like, the doctor woman will give you rapid tongue movement if you just jump into that hay bale outside the window. He yells and trips out. I'm sorry, that was an intrusive thought, but I just thought of that, and I suppose I just had to get it out. But that's what my mind created when I heard those two separate things. I put them together and made it into something funny. And then the guy thinks to himself, well, that didn't work. She just thinks I'm crazy now. I don't know. And then I thought, tongues will be tough. I'm sorry, I'm in a weird mood, okay?
What they found are a couple things. People with schizophrenia subvocalize a ton. And furthermore, the more that they subvocalize, the more powerful their distortions of reality. So literally, there is a correlation between how much people with schizophrenia subvocalize and how much their thoughts will shape their reality. Now, the good news is that this is true of all human beings, that as we subvocalize, we activate our orbitofrontal cortices, we activate our frontal lobes, we take whatever those thoughts are and we start to implant them. And the other thing to keep in mind is it's not about an argument and letting logic rise to the top. That's not what we're talking about here. What we are talking about is the implantation of positive thoughts. So I know it sounds insane, but it turns out that our thoughts are actually the source of our happiness. The very first thing that happens is a thought, which then triggers an emotion, which then triggers a thought loop, which then leads to mental illness. And it turns out that you can implant positive thoughts, fingers crossed here, through this technique of subvocalization. Definitely works for Mantra and me and the people that I've taught it to in terms of chanting this, and it sort of changes their mindset. It changes the way that they look at things. And once you change the way that you look at life, it allows you to live life in a healthier way. So as crazy as that sounds, I strongly encourage y'all to try it and check it out. And don't give up on thinking as a source of happiness. Because if you stop and think about it, what you really find is that when we stopped trying to think our way to happiness is really when we've lost the opportunity to think our way to happiness, right? Because we gave up on that battle. And that's why people are so unhappy today, because we've surrendered our most powerful tool, which is our thoughts. Now, if y'all are interested in more stuff like this, different kinds of yogic.
And see, this is why I get so upset when I look around and I obviously don't want to talk about it, especially on YouTube, but you see the world falling apart and all the bad things, all the bad thought processes people have, and you think they're focusing so much on their feelings and they're literally screwing themselves over by not taking the opportunity to just think about it, to make it make sense, and then if it doesn't make sense, figure out why. Just work through it until they come to a normal conclusion that anyone would come to, and then just keep doing that. Work your way out of the delusion. But no one wants to do that because everyone reinforces them that, oh, this is normal. This is normal. Oh, yeah, it wasn't normal before, but now it's normal. And now it's even more normal. In fact, if you don't do that, you're not normal. And that puts social pressure on people. And I just think there's just no hope for society. well, there is hope. There's intelligence, controlling your thoughts. Because if it can help me, it could probably help other people. Because I have a really bad temper. But this stuff does work on me. But when people tell me to focus on my feelings, that intrinsically aggravates me. Because the feelings, I'm self-aware. I know the feelings are the problem. My thoughts are not the problem. It's just the types of thoughts that I get from the feelings that are the problem. If that makes sense. That's why anytime I would walk into a counseling office and everything was focused on feelings and not thoughts, I was already done before I started. So, luckily I have a counselor now that does cognitive behavioral therapy. And what that is about is, that's what the kind of therapy I get, that I receive, is it focuses on cognitive understanding of the behavior that results from the cognitive thought process, I suppose you could say. And it's focused on the cognition that leads to the behavior. And the therapy is focused on changing the behavior through changing the thoughts. So that's basically how to fix that. And the reason I do that is because if I was just sitting there talking about my feelings, after a while, the counselor would need a counselor, because I have some pretty bad thoughts, and they perpetually get worse and worse until I lose myself. So I focus on my mind. So yeah, it really does help to really think about things in the right way. I mean, there's no wrong way to think, but there are harmful thought loops you can get into once you lose it's like, you know what? It's like driving a four-wheeler. If you go up a hill and you hit a power band and it won't stop running, and it keeps like running the same leg over in a circle, you've lost control. You might as well just crawl out of the way if you can. But if you're on the four-wheeler and you're going real smooth up the hill, everything's good. But once you get in a loop that you can't seem to escape very easily, that's when it gets difficult.
And meditative thought control techniques. Highly recommend y'all check out Dr. K's guide. There's a guide to meditation.
Now, let me say something. If you're like me and you hate to do what other people say, instead of meditating, if you're someone who just naturally stares into space, just stare at the wall for a while. And just think. Think about anything you want. Just don't get into a thought loop. That's what helps me. That's also what Elon did when he was a kid. He would stare out the window and think about the leaves changing colors. I'm sorry, now I'm imagining that in my head as well, and it's interesting to me. Might need to brush my teeth again. I brushed them a little bit ago, but I might need to do it again.
Which will teach you some. There's a guide to ADHD and doing stuff, which also teaches a lot about thought control and how to cultivate the right thoughts in the mind. So y'all can check that out for more info if you want. Good luck.
Thank you, GamerGG. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to like and subscribe and hit the bell for more notifications. I'll just point somewhere and maybe it'll appear somewhere right here. You know, right here or something like that. I don't know. Maybe it won't, but maybe it will appear right here. Okay, anyways, guys, have a nice day. Gothic Central, out. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Cut here.